Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokemon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokemon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hello everyone, welcome back, welcome to another Koffee Talks. I'm here as always with David, and not as always with Mike Martin, a.k.a PokePop. We're all here, the three of us, we've all got our nice background set up. Mike's got that Worlds 06, I've got my usual Worlds 2012. David's got some nice windows with shutters on. So everyone all ready to go here. Before we introduce our guest, David, you got anything to catch me up on for the week before we get into talking to Mike?
Well, we better. We better get caught up on one thing. Why am I sitting with this background? Okay. And I think that's critically important because today, folks, we have the entire hobby. If like the entire hobby watches the podcast, the six of you that watch have the distinct pleasure of like we do of having Mike Martin on the podcast. So what I did is I said, I'm not going to sit around and have my internet disrupt what's going to be a wonderfully informative and candid conversation. I'm going to get out of here. And I went to my daughter's house. I had to pay her to let me use her backyard because we're not on speaking terms. That doesn't matter because, you know, when you got Mike Martin coming on, Mike Martin, guys, is the OG of Pokemon. You guys call me the OG. Figure out what OG stands for, an insulting thing, and then throw that at me. But this guy is the real deal. And we are so privileged to have him on today. So I got out of there so I'd have no disruptions. I could actually hear every single word he said. Hopefully I won't hear all of the words Dan says. And we can give you a real treat because, as you all know, when Dan and I bring a guest on, we get 6 times the normal viewers and a lot more credibility by the folks that we bring on. So thank you for joining us. Especially thank you to Mike. And that's my quick intro. So, I just got to dive in. We could go on with this gentleman for 16 hours and he's only going to give us 2 because he said there's a lot more important things he has to do than what we have scheduled for him today. So, Mike, how are you? Tell us about who you are for folks that don't know. I don't know you that well. I know you as stories of being a moderator back in the day and having sort of this kind of an integral piece of helping me ultimately acquire the pre-release Raichu card. But tell us about your kind of long storied career with the hobby and let us sort of use that as a jumping off point.
My son got me started because he came home with some cards 24 years ago, about 24 years ago. And I said, well, if we're going to get these cards, we're not going to just stick them in a binder and collect them. We're going to learn how to play. And so I looked for some websites and I found PokeGym and I found Pojo. And I spent a lot of time on the sites arguing about rulings. And eventually they decided, hey, let's make this guy a moderator. And then from that, we started doing the compendium of rulings because Wizards of the Coast at the time wasn't collecting rulings and people were doing different things at different tournaments, and that wasn't a good thing. So we decided to collect the rulings that they gave on a weekly chat and publish them in a compendium of rulings so that everyone could have the same rulings at tournaments. And Wizards liked what we did there. So when the PokeGym shut down through no fault of our own, they said, hey, we wanted to start a community board. So they said, we want you guys to be our admins. So we were the admins on the first Wizards of the Coast community board. And then after that, after they lost the license, we kept a relationship with Pokemon, kept the website going, pokegym.net with the compendium. And so I've been judging. The first tournament I ever judged was a Super Trainer Showdown, the 2001 with the Sneasel. And I've been pretty much judging ever since.
Yeah, we talked about the Jumbo Sneasel last week. David said he's been trying to get a hold of a giant card like that.
Yeah, I actually owned 3 of the 4 of them. There were 4. They had 4 copies made, and I just happened to look onto somebody selling them on eBay, and he had listed one, and it actually didn't sell. I came across it when the posting had ended, and nobody bought it. He was asking $99 for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I contacted him. I said, "Hey, do you still have that? Can I get it?" He says, "Well, I actually have 4 of them." And so I got 3, and Time in Martindale, who's another member of Team Compendium, got the 4th one. And these came with it. These display pieces from these are display pieces from the Super Trainer Showdown. He threw those in for as a bonus, and so I wound up getting I paid $99 for the other two, so $200 altogether. And I wish I had hung on to them.
How long ago did you let him go?
I let them go over a period of times. The first one I sold, which is the one that's destroyed, unfortunately, for around $250, I think, which is insane thinking back on it. And I never got the price up to insane heights. I forget what I sold the other ones for, but they weren't anything like what the last one sold for, which unfortunately wasn't the one I sold.
Yeah, it's all that stuff
And
from
that's the
back
one.
in the day. I don't think even when I jumped into things in like 08, 09, no one was expecting anything like what we have today in terms of value on some of this stuff.
Yeah, well, like with the pre-release Raichu as a thank you, uh, Mike Boozer gave me a box of first edition Fossil and a box of Skyridge as thank yous. And I held on to them for a few years, but I eventually sold them for like, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000 each. I forget what the amount was, but it was, before things went crazy. I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
wish I'd hung on to those things.
Yeah, Skyridge is like 20,000 plus now, I think.
Yeah,
Skyridge
yeah.
is. I mean, I've heard stories of some of the last tournaments that Watsy did. I think it was the Fan Appreciation Tournament. I've heard that was right before they lost the license, so just
Yes.
all of their remaining stock they just
Yeah, they
brought
just
down to the
cleared out the
tournament,
warehouse.
and anything they still had in their building just was wheeled down to a tournament and just given
Yeah.
out. And now, yeah, I heard of like cases of Skyridge, cases of Legendary Collection, all that stuff that is. I mean, a
Yeah.
case of Skyridge now is easy six figures. It's crazy.
Unfortunately, I did not go to that. I really should have.
Mike, I want you to talk about, because we do have occasionally we'll get a new viewer or two, thank goodness. So when you talk about as a reward from Mike Boozer for getting those boxes, can you talk just briefly about the your role in the pre-release Raichu acquisition, or how it all kind of moved about,
Yeah.
and then
So
and why Mike Boozer rewarded you?
I think it's pretty well reported in the article that was it CCG did. That basically Patricia is a seller that has some pretty high end clients. You used to be one of them, and she had a client who was looking for the best. He had some money to spend, and he wanted to get what's the best Pokemon card to get. And she said, "Well, that'd be the pre-release Raichu. That's the holy grail." And he said, "Okay, get me one of that." So she reached out to me, and she said, "You have a lot of contacts with people at Wizards who might have had that. Can you help me out here?" And I reached out to Mike Boozer, and I said, "Hey, I think we got someone who'd be willing to give you some decent money for this pre-release Raichu you have." And so I helped broker that end of the deal. And it was really surprising to me when he decided not to keep it.
Yeah. And we anything you don't feel comfortable answering, because I asked Dan 9,900 questions, he answers one or two of them only. So we're used to the confidentiality here, but from your perspective, being kind of on the inside, or at least around this hobby for so long, what is your feeling as far as how many more might be around out there if you just had to guess?
Well, the stories have all ranged around like single digit numbers, like maybe 11 at the high end. I've heard 7, 9, 11. So I haven't heard anything different than that from the people who were there and who had the cards. Some other people have speculated, but they have no basis for any of that speculation. So, I'll trust that number is probably about right.
Are you aware of any others that are being held, though, that haven't come to market?
I'd be trying to get one myself if I did.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, if you're
No,
trying to
yeah.
chase down the person, the only person that is actually on record where we know at some point 100% owned one is Andrew Finch.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Finch, it's definitely reported that at the TMB, Andrew Finch was physically in possession of a pre-release Raichu. So
Yeah, I'm sure he was Boozer's boss, so I'm sure he would have one.
yeah, he's the only name that I would even know, even slightly connected to something like that. But it is all just high-end WotC employees from 1999 is the only place you're looking.
Yeah, and Dan, I mean, it's interesting because I didn't. It's funny, interpretation is up to the person reading and maybe how the writing is going and the flavor of the writing. But I never took that from the Andrew Finch mentioning back in those articles. I took it as if he was an employee showing people this card. I never actually took it as it was his card. So I see what you're saying, Dan. I just never interpreted it that way until you said it the way you said it just now. So
I mean,
Yeah, I
I would
would
have
think he
only
probably has one.
interpreted. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I would think he probably has one,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was just from
but I don't know.
knowing his name in terms of where he was in relation to WotC, and he stayed at WotC for a long time, and then I believe worked or potentially still works at TPCI now. I feel like he's the kind of it was the kind of big name where I could definitely see him having one, and then reading in the articles that he was showing one off made sense to me that it was
yeah.
his.
I guess it makes sense. Mike, before we get into your kind of career through this whole thing and lots of the experiences, I do want to hear about your son because that's, one of the themes that Dan and I have talked about in a lot of these podcasts is a lot of the kids kind of coming back into the hobby after not being involved for a while. So if you would be so kind, what's your son's name? How old is he? And what did or did he not do in the hobby? And does he ever harbor any notions of coming back in?
Uh, yeah, I don't know if I want to necessarily give out my kids' names. Leave it up to them if they want to do that.
Yeah, no
But
sweat.
they played as kids. I think they still play the video games for fun, but they haven't done anything competitive in decades.
Okay.
I mean, we
Okay.
definitely see that a lot with a lot of the people who've been in judging and tournament organizing for a long time. The story is, oh, the kids got into it, and then the kids got out of it, but the parents stuck around. Jimmy Ballard, I think, is a big case of that, where he played along with his kids, and then he kept playing and organizing and judging way after his kids stopped having any interest in it. There's a lot of similar stories.
Yeah, but some of them, like Vince Kreckler, his son is still a pretty active player, I think.
Yeah, I think Andrew, at least, I think, is still playing quite a lot. In fact, I think all four of the Correctla kids are still involved with Pokemon in some way. I think it's some are playing, some are on the more business side of it now.
And Mike, what kept you in all this time? So when Dan says, "Hey, the kids finally dropped out, but you stayed in," what about it? What was it easy? Was it tough? Was it reluctant? Was it you just stopped? You never said no, and then occasionally yes, 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 got you to where you are.
I'm an obsessive compulsive. That's why. I used to collect comic books, and I had a really nice collection of comic books. But then when my son was born, we sold it to get some money, and that was like, so I didn't have anything I was collecting then. And then this came along, and I got bit by the bug of collecting, and it fit a lot of niches for me. There's the collecting aspect, and the rulings really fits in with my with my, I don't know what the term is, but my personality of analytical personality of analyzing things and seeing what's right and fixing problems. So it fit a lot of niches for me.
And you just kept going.
Yeah.
So tell us what do you do? How often are you're a volunteer? You're not an employee of the company, correct?
Yeah. So I guess you might say at times I've been a contractor, and other times um, the way they have organizers now, they used to have what they called um, premier tournament organizers, where all of the big tournaments, the city championships, state championships, battle roads, all those were run by specific people that contracted with Pokemon, and I was one of those back in the day. But once they came out with the challenges and the cups, they kind of spread it out more to where, as long as you are a professor and pass the test, and you can run them at stores. So it became a lot broader at that point. I kind of was grandfathered into the program at that point because I had a league that wasn't at a store. And I also had relationships with stores that I already had in the region. So I just kept running events at those places. But I shifted my non-store location to a store location now. So now I work with a few different stores and I run events there. And I also, they have what they call regional uh, professor coordinators, uh, which I'm in the Northeast region. They have some people they've designated to do that, and so that's a bit more of a deeper relationship. So it's a little bit hard to explain the detail of my relationship, but there's a lot of different tendrils there.
Okay.
Yeah, there is kind of a much bigger gulf nowadays than there used to be between the smaller events and the bigger events. It's now just you have in store, which is challenges and cups, and then it goes right up to regionals. Whereas you used to have the cities and the states, which kind of bridged that gap a little bit. I know one of the tournament things you were always most famous for was being involved in that Christmas to New Year run of cities championships, where you guys would
Mini
all
marathon.
yeah. If you would tell us a little bit about that, you guys would all coordinate your cities together.
So cities are kind of analogous to cups are now. Although you could wind up getting, I used to get like 100 player attendance at some of them, especially when we ran them together, like you said, at Christmas time. So the week between Christmas and New Year's, I would always take off from work, and we'd schedule all of my cups that I had in the region, just four. It wasn't a huge amount. So I'd string the four of them together in the week before Christmas and New Year's, and people would actually get hotels and stay. I didn't come up with the idea. The people in Georgia had started what they call the marathon down there, and they were doing like 2 week long marathon of stringing, 10 or more city championships together. And I said,
Yeah.
well, I like the idea of that, but that's a little bit too much for me. So I just did four up here that week between Christmas and New Year's. We had anywhere from 80 to 100 players at those. And then I ran the New York State Championship, which we got up to probably around 200, 230 players at before they closed down the state championships.
Yeah.
But I think some people might have had even bigger. But it was a good transition, like you were saying, having you'd have judge teams at those bigger tournaments, and so you'd have someone who's a head judge and a few different floor judges, and somebody else doing deck checks, and somebody else doing match slips and so forth. And so the judges got to have the experience of being on a team, which you don't really get to have now until you get to the regional level, because cities and cups, if you're lucky, if you have one or two judges, and to go from one or two judges to a team of 200 judges, which I think is the size of the staff now, it's a totally different thing. So I think it was good having something like a state championship where you had a team of 10 people maybe, where you could get some experience working on a team.
Yeah, I mean, any amount of you can head judge as many in-store cups as you want with 50, 60 players maybe at their top, but no amount of that is going to prepare people for their first jump into the 2,000 player regionals or whatever. It is. I've never judged, obviously, but I can imagine it's super daunting the first time they have to make that jump with no intermediate thing.
Yeah, it is a huge jump. Well, the first tournament I ever judged ever was a Super Trainer Showdown. So I never judged a store tournament. It was just straight into that massive tournament. So I know
Yeah.
the feeling.
So, about how many players were the Super Trainer Showdowns? I imagine they were smaller than current day regionals. I imagine it wasn't 3 or 4 thousand players over age divisions or whatever. But about
Yeah, I
what are
don't
you
know off the
talking?
top of my head. It was definitely. I mean, the East Coast one was at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and it was in that big stadium complex there. So it was, but it was also kind of like a big convention because they had a ton of side events going on. How big the tournament was? Yeah, I'd just be guessing. It certainly was a big tournament. I don't know if it's matching up to the size of regionals today or not.
Okay. So, as someone who wasn't there, was the STS basically just a tournament, or was there a lot of Pokemon related stuff going on with the tournament being the main focus.
Yeah, it was a real show. They had all kinds of not only like side events of side tournaments, but just all kinds of Pokemon things going on. It was a real show. They had a stage show. They had uh, uh, you know, kind of like what they did in the old Japanese tournaments, where you go through a challenge where you play 3 rounds, and as you go through the 3 rounds, winner gets a pack and so forth, and then
Yeah.
if you win that, you get to challenge the gym leader, say. So you'd have somebody. Uh, they actually had Team Compendium as people they could challenge to play, and they had people dressed up like the gym leaders, because this was for the 2001 one. The gym leader sets had just come out.
Nice.
So it was a real production.
Yeah.
An amazing thing. I would not be surprised if regionals get to that point, because with the number of players they have going to them now,
Yeah.
they
At the very
really
least, at the very least, the ICs, or any IC, and then I've seen photos from the Europe ones. That looks like that kind of level of production. There is the big tournament going on, but that's not it. Like at a
Yeah.
regionals, it still feels like if you go, you're probably only going for the tournament. There's not much else going on. No one, like I've traveled out to one or two with Laura, but now she travels just without me. It's maybe a few smaller side events and some vendors and stuff at regionals. It's usually not worth traveling just for that if you're not even trying to get into one of the main events. But then the ICs, there's so much to do, even if you have no interest in playing main events. So it sounds like it's a lot closer to that in terms of production and what was going on.
Well, even at regionals now, they got side events going all the time. I mean, certainly on Saturday, uh, maybe 3/4 of the floor space is taken up by the tournament, but there's a quarter of the floor space that they're doing side events on, and then as people start dropping, they start expanding the floor space for side events, and then on Sunday, most of the space is for side events, because the tournament now is a much smaller part on Sunday. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of that at regionals now too.
I guess it just feels at regionals, the side events and stuff that are going on, it's more just playing the TCG or playing the BGC. Whereas at the ICs and what the STS sounds like, it's a lot more varied. It's maybe you are playing the card game, but it's not just a sit down Swiss round tournament. It was something more of an experience, like you said, with
Yeah.
those gym leader things. Or at the ICs, they have all sorts going on now at ICs that are not just, build battles or sit down and play 3 rounds, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Again, I always ask the dumb questions, and Mike, you've watched the podcast, so you're certainly well aware of that. Mike, what's the difference between judge and professor as a title? If you're a judge, if you're a professor, I'm not exactly sure where you fit in and what the difference is.
So the professor is kind of the overall term. It encompasses everyone who's doing anything to help run a tournament. So one's main part of a professor is there's actually three different tests you could take. You can take the organizer test, which is the person who sets up the tournament and runs it and reports it and all that. And then you can be the TCG judge, which is what it sounds like. And then there's also the video game judge. So there's three separate qualifications you can get.
And so, generally speaking, are you personally more of an organizer at this point?
For the events that I'm running locally, I'm the organizer most of the time. For when I work at regionals or internationals or worlds, I'm a judge.
Okay. And what is that? What kind of pressure or no pressure is on you for staying what I would call up to date with your judge knowledge, right? So again, if a lot of us are collectors, we don't necessarily play, and we don't understand when it comes to these sets are now rolled into the new format. You hear all these terms, but they don't necessarily resonate with us, immediately. So how much education or how much studying do you have to do to figure out what is new and what's not new? Or is it just a matter of we're just swapping in cards, but all the rules for the last 10, 15, 20 years have generally been the same?
Yeah, I think it's pretty important for people to stay on top of it. The metagame is constantly changing with new sets, new effects, new rule mechanics come into play.
What does
And
metagame mean, Mike?
so metagame is the game of the game. You can build a deck. Like, say you're building Charizard EX as your deck, and that may be the most popular deck. It's not the most popular deck, but for the sake of argument, Charizard, it may be coming with the rotation. But if people know that there's going to be a lot of Charizard EX at a tournament, they are going to play a deck that will beat Charizard EX because they know they're going to face a lot of Charizard EX. So they might have not chosen that deck in a vacuum, but knowing that they're going to be facing this deck, they're going to choose that deck to do well against it. So that's kind of what the metagame is. You want to not only choose what the best deck is, but you want to choose the deck that will do the best against what the other decks are that you expect to be there.
So do you actually are you aware of, okay, here are the 3 or 4 most popular decks at this time, and we should be aware of how they may be used? So from a judging perspective, we're ahead of that?
Yeah, you definitely want to be aware of what the interactions are. And I'm in a bit of a unique situation because being a member of Team Compendium, I'm on the rules team, which interfaces with Pokemon R&D. So I didn't even talk about that relationship. So we've had the relationship with Pokemon R&D all these years, where we find what card interactions might be difficult, might have strange interactions, and we submit them to Pokemon R&D, and we say, if this is done, what's the result? And we propose an answer, but basically they come back and either say yes, that's right, or they say, well, actually no, this is what's going to happen. And then we publish that in the compendium, which all the judges can use. So if they come into this situation in the tournament, they have a reference to help them decide what the best way to handle that is. So there's also other resources for judge. There's the Professor Discord, which is a great resource if you're in the middle of a tournament and you come across something you don't know how to handle it. It's not in the compendium. You can post on there, and other expert judges will say, "Oh, well, this is how you should handle that." So that's a really nice resource that judges have now that they didn't have years ago. And there's also training. Pokemon over the past few years, the professor coordinator they've had, Becca Roundtree, has put into place a lot of training videos, which is on a thing called Professor University. And the judges can go there and they can watch videos training them on lots of different things. So they have really good training. I mean, it's night and day the way judges are now compared to 10, 15 years ago. I used to have to run around making rulings when I was at a tournament, helping people decide things. Now, the judges mostly know those things, so it's not as much running around now. The judges are much higher quality than they were 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely remember playing in tournaments where it was judges would potentially be just searching for keywords on PokeGym to try and find a thread for a ruling in the middle of the event, and then just having to make it up on the fly if they if they couldn't find one. It is kind of funny to see, I guess, how it's shifted in terms of how many people are playing and stuff, and what and who people recognize. Because obviously back on PokeGym, when that was the place where everyone was asking rulings questions, people knew, Mike, that when you posted, that was it. That was the answer. But now we see a lot of, on Verbank, on the Facebook group, whenever you post something, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know, you could interpret it this way. And it's like, guys, if 99 people out of 100 are saying one thing and one person's saying another, and that one person is Mike Martin, that's what you go with. No matter, even if it doesn't make sense to you, even if you can't figure it out, Mike is the guy with the answer. He's the guy who's spoken to the people who make the rules. That he's the one you have to listen to. It's definitive. There's no further argument to be had.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You don't want to go in there and say I'm PokePop, damn it, because it doesn't play well.
No, and it's funny. It would have played. I don't know if it would have ever played well, but it certainly played well back in the OG type of days. I just think there was more respect for the people that were in those roles, and now
these people that Dan's talking about, they have no idea who I am.
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah. Well, I want to know more about. So let's tailor to cards for just a minute. Dan has spoken in the past about like maybe a site you can go to, or you guys as judges go to. I don't know if it's judges or professors. You'll correct me, where you are able to build points and then acquire things for them for some of the things you do. And then I also want to tie in that recently there was this professor set of 8 cards that's been handed out to some people as a award reward for the things that they've done in the hobby. So talk about maybe a little bit, Mike, both of those things and other things that are gifts or awards, or that people get for participation in the role that you have.
Right. Well, I'll talk about the last one first because unfortunately I don't have that. the They've given out every year. I think the past couple of years. This is a very recent thing. Just the past couple of years, they give out like a plaque with 8. Is it 8? I think it's 8. Yeah, 8. So
Yeah.
3 on the top,
8
3
cards,
on the
and
bottom,
then
2 on the side,
the
and
mid-
then in the middle is like, thank you for being the best professor ever. Thank you for your contributions to the program. So some people have gotten them, and deservedly so. I unfortunately have not been awarded that, so I would love to get one, and I'm sure you would love to get one too. Uh, I imagine it'd be hard to get them off of people because they're exceedingly rare, but also they have the meaning of the award to them. So that's that. Yeah, I would love to get one of those, but the professor store. So part of being a professor is when you work an event. Excuse me. When you work an event, you get professor points. Um, you're pretty limited. They used to not have a limit on it, and some people like myself and Vince would rack up a lot of points with all the different events we did. But now they're limited to depending on what level of professor you are. You're either a basic professor, stage 1, or stage 2. And the basic professor is limited to 10 points in a month. The stage 1 is limited to 20 points in a month, and the stage 3 is limited to 30 points in a month. So it takes a good bit of time to accumulate any significant number of points. But you can order things using those points from the store. Usually things like there's usually well, let's say I don't have the one that they just had from this year. But here's an example of a recent one. As you can see, it's a judge card, and it's got the professor program stamped on it there. And these are given out to people who have helped the regional professor coordinators. So I actually need to give some of these out. I gave some of them out a month ago, but I have some other ones I have to give out. And then there's so they're really nice rewards. Then there's things like Professor Dice, Professor card boxes, deck boxes, play mats. Play mats are nice. These are
Dan, do we know what card Mike just showed? Are you
Yes.
familiar with it?
Yes, Mike just showed a copy of Judge from Scarlet and Violet. You don't have one yet. That specific card that Mike just showed, I think is going to be a pretty rare Professor promo. Because
Okay.
from what I've heard, the only distribution on that is going to be through regional coordinators like Mike, who get to give them out to people who help. So I have that on my list. I know, but I haven't been actively looking for it for you yet, David, because like Mike showed, he's given some out. He still has some more to give out. I think a lot of the regional coordinators are in the same position where they haven't given out the majority of theirs yet. So we're waiting on to see when more people start getting those, and then we'll try and buy you one, David.
Okay. Yeah.
When
Mike, as you know, Dan always tells me what I have and don't have, so I have to ask the question. So
sure.
When it comes to the Professor Store, luckily the actual cards that you can get in the Professor Store tend to be a really low points value. It's normally only about 5 points. I think gets you a pack of 2 promos, which is either 2 of the same or the ones that just came out, which sadly sold out, and I'm waiting for them to come back in stock. You get 2 different ones, but then it's the play mats and stuff like that where you have to save up a large amount of points to be able to get those.
Yeah, I just was showing while you guys were talking. I was showing the play mats.
Yeah, I'll get some photos of those
But
play mats.
those are the black ones. Those are the easy. Those are the ones you can buy in the Professor Store. There's also white versions, which are only given out at big tournaments by Pokemon employees who once in a while will give one to somebody. So I
Yeah,
think I might have.
I think we have one of the white ones, me and Laura. Well, I say me and Laura, it's Laura. I think we maybe have the Kanto white one, and then we have all the first 4 in black. I don't know if they've gone to Generation 5 yet, but yeah, I'll get some photos of those up because those are super nice playmats.
Yeah.
Mike, when you talk about, I mean, you're one of the folks that's been around the longest, that we really can sit down and talk about with, that's seen so much of the hobbies, ups and downs and intermediate times and all of that. From your perspective, sort of inward looking out, what would you say? What strikes you as being different today than in the beginning, either good or bad? I mean, just when just from your history, you think about. I posted something on my Instagram today about I try to post something clever because yeah, like I'm really clever. But anyways, so today I posted some old pictures of one of the early sets, and I said, "This harkens me back to a simpler time." And in this world there is something about simpler times versus the complexities we have these days, and in people and varying opinions and all that kind of stuff. So from your perspective, how do you view Pokemon and the TCG and your role in it, and just over the last its evolution in the last 15, 20 years?
I think simpler time is a really good way to put it, because back then events were so much smaller. Everybody knew everybody. I had good relationships with everybody who ran things at Pokemon, because there were only 3 or 4 people. If you 3 or 4 front facing people, but then maybe 6 to 10 people altogether. And so it was possible to get to know everybody. But things have grown. Event size has exploded. The number of people playing has exploded. The number of judges has exploded. There's whole new waves of people coming in. It's great for the game. The game is exploding, right? The problem is not, are we going to have enough people playing? The problem is, are we going to be able to find a place to fit everybody? And most of the recent regionals have sold out because they don't have enough room. So, I think the health of the game is very good. That's another thing. Going back to the metagame in terms of the health of the game. If you look back at the beginning, there was only a couple of decks that were really playable. There was the Haymaker deck, the Potpourri, a couple of maybe, Wigglytuff once that came along. There were very few decks that were viable. But if you look at the tournaments now, the top 8, you may find 6 different decks in the top 8. So the health of the game is incredibly good right now. People don't like there only being one good choice to play. So having a lot of different good choices of cards that can play each other. And sure, there's been a lot of power creep over the years, but as long as they can give a good choice to the players of what they can play, I think things will stay healthy in terms of the playing side of things. You know more about the collecting side of things now than I do now, but certainly we had the big surge during COVID, and things have settled down a bit now. But I don't know. Do you think things have kind of leveled out now?
I think they've plateaued and values and stuff have fallen off a little bit since the height of COVID, but they're still unbelievably up from pre-COVID. It's like cards that were, I don't know, $500 maybe spiked to like 15,000 during COVID, and now that they're back down to say 10,000, everyone's like, oh, they've fallen off this. So it's like, just compare stuff to.
I'm happy with 10,000. Yeah.
Yes, stop comparing stuff to like June of 2020 and compare it to what it was worth at the end of 2019, and you'll see that stuff has not fallen off.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an unsustainable jump, right? So it went up like that, and then it just that's good. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, there was very much just a lot of as soon as one thing sold, like at the time it was when stuff, no one really wanted a lot of stuff, or it wasn't changing hands for that much money, so maybe 1 or 2 people had them out there for sale, and then people who are just getting into it and have a lot of money and don't really know what they're doing go, oh, there's only one of those out there, I'm going to buy it now for however much, and then the 1,000 other people that have them go, oh, okay, I'm going to sell mine now as well. I think a good example is the spectator card for Worlds 04. You know, the first Tropical Wind. Like, we saw those change hands all day for $5 each. Like,
Right.
from 2004 to probably 2018, 2019, that was a $5-10 card. And then suddenly in 2020, people start buying them for like $150, and then thousands of them hit the market. Yeah, like
Right.
so many people have just had so many of those, but no one was listing or talking about them a lot because it was a $5 card that everyone had a ton of, and all it takes is a couple of people who don't know what they're doing to buy it for 150, and then the market gets flooded, and then I mean, I think it's still probably a $50-$60 card now. I think people are still trying to get that. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. You know, it's the only World Championship card that they gave out to everybody.
Yeah.
And the financial piece of all this is just so much more complicated. I think in some ways I'd rather be sitting where you are, Mike, because as much as there's complexity in the game and there's more choices in the decks and there's all of that, it still retains somewhat of its same kind of format in what's going on. And in our world on the collecting side, the real difference is, you've got so much more product coming in, and you've got so many more collectors coming in, that you begin to see these kind of schisms or scasms, depending, chasms, as you listen to the word. It's almost like earthquakes sort of cutting across the ground. And do you want modern or do you want older stuff? Do you want to be a bulk seller? Do you want to be more of a precision seller? Just a couple things. Are you a Bitcoin person who's come into a bunch of money and you're going to throw that money? Are you now from the Chinese who are climbing into the market and they're getting in much more, and that's changing the liquidity a bit? There's so much of these different things that, and then of course, are you going to collect the one-offs, or are you going to collect something in between? So and then you get stuff that's the cards versus the boxes and all of the questions around authenticity and resealing. And so you start layering on all these different concerns versus, okay, here's some people playing a game. Let's just make sure we get the rulings right and make sure that, it's all fair and we can't be questioned later on. And to me, that's not in a good or bad way. It's a bit more of a doable task, a simple task, however you'd say it,
Yeah. Well, I've always been a collector too. I'm certainly not on your level, but I try to get bargains. If I can get something, I like collecting things that are unusual that most people aren't collecting, and then every once in a while, something that I got that was unusual blows up because people find out about it.
Yeah,
that's always nice.
Well, I think that's a good way to jump slightly into the photo that you posted this week, Mike. Last week in our podcast, we talked about David purchasing a very rare card, which was the non-glossy version of the Bilingual Executor from the original Tropical Mega Battle. We talked about that tiny variation on the tie, and how that's one of the ways you can visually distinguish the original tournament version from the magazine reprint. So, Mike, I'll put the photo on screen. Why don't you describe what photo you posted on Facebook? That I'm assuming at least partially because you listened to our podcast and found out about it. But tell people what you posted.
So, I forget the circumstances, but one of the old Wizards of the Coast employees had given me a number of cards, and among them were a bunch of these Tropica Mega Battle bilingual executors, and I think I have more than these three, but there were these three that over time I managed to get signed by a few different people. So one of them is Uyama, who's the artist of the card, and he's also one of the main card designers for creatures. And one of them is signed by I think that's Ishihara, the one with the little
I think from
Pikachu.
the photo you posted, I think the one on the right is Ishihara. It was the one in the middle I wasn't sure on the signature on.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up. I forget who that is, but that also is, I think, is an artist and possibly game designer. I have to look that one up. I was thinking, I should look that up before we have the podcast, but I didn't. But yeah. So, but I've managed to get a number of different nice autographs over the years. So these are just some of them. Um, this one here, Mitsuhiro Arita, with the shadowless Charizard.
Yeah.
I actually in Worlds 2004 managed to actually play a game of Pokemon with him, trading card game.
Wow.
Because we were down in the lounge playing, and he came by saying hi, and I said, "Would you like to play?" And he one of the creatures judges was there translating, and he said he didn't know how to play, but he wound up playing with the creature's game designer coaching him in the game. So there's a picture, I can share that picture with you of me playing him.
That's very cool.
That's great. Cute. Really good. So Dan, play out. So what Dan needs to say, what Dan means to say, Mike, is what an incredible thing. I mean, what an incredible thing to not have one of those cards, have three of those cards, possibly more, have three of those cards autographed by some of the most, revered folks in the hobby. And you don't even care. You're just like, these are just memories and mementos, and I've got them tucked away.
Oh, I
Um,
care.
no, but you know what I mean. In other words, it's not like you're out there trying to monetize them, or that's not your priority. Your priority is the fact that you've just picked up some wonderful things along the way. Clearly, you've said you've monetized some things along the way, but they're just, it really speaks to one of the benefits of you being involved in this hobby all this time, and some of these cool things that you've acquired that you've fortunately been able to hang on to.
Yeah, my wife would like me to monetize more things.
Yeah. So talk about that, because I think that's important. That by the way, um, that means I don't know if that means that your wife is not. I don't think she'd be a sugar mama if that's her opinion, but I'm not sure. Actually, she could be, because a lot of these Dan's Laura wants Dan to get a job. So
No,
I'm not gonna. Let me just. I retract everything I just said.
she
So I'm
stays at
gonna make
home.
no commentary on your wife and her
I'm the
and her
sugar daddy.
Yes, you're the sugar daddy. So that would make some sense. So do you ever feel, we speak to let's talk about the professor cards just as a quick example, that 8 card set. So I do have a set of that, and I did get it from someone who basically extracted it from the plaque because they didn't want to be judged for selling it, right? So they don't want their name out there. They don't want people to judge them for monetizing. And I've heard through my years in doing this that some people are very concerned of that. Some people aren't. Some people have cards they're too afraid to come out. They want to leave the company first, or leave their working with the company before they decide to sell anything. How do you feel about that? I mean, do they ever say you should, you shouldn't, you can, you can't? It's yours. We don't care.
Yeah.
You know.
So the rules are certainly people who work directly for Pokemon, they I'm sure cannot monetize anything while they're still working for Pokemon. All the people at Wizards of the Coast, they didn't do anything with any of their stuff until after they left Wizards of the Coast. And I'm sure Pokemon has the same rules. In terms of professors, they actually clarified. I'm not. I don't think you discussed. Did you discuss this a couple of weeks ago? They actually clarified the rules recently, where anything that's given to a league for free to be given to players, the stores, and you could say by extension professors maybe, should not be selling those things, because the optics of it, even if they didn't take the stuff that they were given for free and sell it directly, maybe a player opened up a pack, one of these prize packs, and gave it to them, and then they turn around and sell it. Well, there's no way to know that they didn't open up the pack themselves and sell it, right? The so recently they clarified the rule that anything that's like within the 3 years of when it was given out, you can't do anything with. But now anything older can be sold, and also anything that was not given to a league to give to players, something, a promo for working at a regional, or a staff promo for a regional, or staff promo for an international, or any of that kind of stuff that was given as an award or as a prize. People can certainly do anything they want with those without any repercussions. So this professor who got that award and turned around and sold it to you, they certainly are within their rights to do that. But they're probably right that a number of people would look down on them for doing it, And I don't agree with them because I understand that people are in different economic positions.
Correct.
And some people can hang on to things and not worry about money, or can spend money to get things. And other people are not in those great economic conditions. They need money to buy a car. They need money for, to pay their rent or whatever. And, or, they want to get a down payment on a house. So if somebody needs money and they're allowed to sell it, I got no problem with that whatsoever.
I think another thing that is maybe on some people's minds, especially with something super rare like this 8 card set, isn't that, if I sell it, oh, Pokemon's going to throw the book at me, I'm going to be in trouble, whatever. More so that, oh, if Pokemon know I'm just going to sell it, maybe I'm off the list to get another one in future. Pokemon's never going to come out and say, oh, you're blackballed, you're not getting another one of these. But maybe the worry is that behind the scenes, the name gets scratched off the potential candidate
I
list.
would hope that they would not be giving the same one to the same person multiple times, because there's so many people who
Yeah,
work hard that they could give these to.
maybe not the same thing, but potential future rewards in future is the kind of thing. Like I'm not saying Pokemon does that. I'm saying that I think is something that is, from at least from people I've talked to, is something that they keep in the back of their mind, that if they sell this cool thing, maybe they don't get a different cool thing in future because
Yeah, no,
the
I
Pokemon
can.
maker is
That
going to sell
certainly
it.
could
Yeah.
be a concern. Whether that's a real concern or not, I don't know. But I could see people being concerned about that. I mean, you look at Poke Beach, right? Dan's familiar with that. Poke Beach used to publish spoilers. They'd get scans of the cards of the new sets before the pre-release, and they would post those cards. And they Pokemon was bent out of shape with them about that, and a lot of the high-end organizers and professors were also bent out of shape with them. But I never was, because I always figured the person who's doing the wrong thing here is the person who gave them the scans. If they're kind of like a news organization where they're posting these images of these cards before the release date, if somebody gives them those scans, I don't have a problem with them posting them. They don't have any contractual relationship with Pokemon, that they're not breaking something. Whoever gave them the scans, they had a contractual relationship with Pokemon, and they're the ones who broke that contract. So they're the ones who should be in trouble.
So this, Dan, goes to the discussion about when you were talking about, and I was mentioning after you mentioned to me, and neither one of us wanted to let anybody know who originally got the information, the that Worlds in 2026 was going to be in San Francisco. So that would be the same kind of example that Mike, kind of a similar circumstances where somebody spit that information out and then a newspaper reported on it. And it's not really the newspaper reporting, it's whoever initially got that information out and should never have
Yeah,
done that kind of thing.
it's the person who
Exactly.
worked for the convention center.
Right.
Someone
Yeah,
who works for a convention center leaked something for
yeah, that's the person
2026.
who should be in trouble, not the newspaper. Yeah.
Right. Right. Mike, how do you decide? So I'm in a dilemma because I'm at the ripe old age of, you've heard it 100 times, audience, 62, actually coming
Um,
up 63 soon.
yeah,
How
we're
old, Mike?
pretty much the
Similar?
same. We're pretty much the same age. I think you may be a
Okay.
month or two younger or older than me.
Yeah, June. So
May.
um so yeah, so right there. So I have a family worth of people. I've got so many people that have no interest in my cards in any way, shape, or form. And as a financial advisor, I know that if I make it to 65 and my wife makes it to 65, that one of us, not me, is going to live to at least 95 years old, statistically speaking. So the question is, I don't have a clue how my collection should live on from a legacy standpoint. And my question for you is, when you have serious conversations about monetizing and things like that, how do you think about it? Do you ever think about, hey, your mortality, or are you just so busy enjoying the hobby and putting stuff away that it really hasn't entered your mind yet?
Well, yeah, actually, I've been working on that for the past year. I up until last year, my stuff was spread throughout the house, and I couldn't tell you what I had or where it was for most of the things. And so I started, going through everything, getting it all into one place, organizing it. I'm still in the middle of organizing it. I haven't finished yet. And so my plan is to have everything organized and cataloged so that, God forbid, when it happens, uh, my family is going to be able to get value for it, because there's not like this thing here. I thought I had found everything that there was, but I was emptying one last box. Oh, this thing's just full of commons. And then I came across this deck box. This is a World's 2006 deck box, which by itself is not probably all that valuable, but it's got
I bet it is.
it's got Uyama. I'm not sure who that is. That's one of the top people.
That's an Ishihara, I think, with the purple up.
It's got Ken Sujimori. That's another artist. I forget who that is. And I think this is Akabani, maybe. No, I think that's a different artist. I don't know. I have to actually go through and determine. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures on this deck box. That this thing's probably worth monetized. I don't know what, $10,000.
Yeah, probably. I mean, a Ken Sugimori alone is thousands of dollars just for the autograph, no matter where it is.
Yeah, so this was just sitting in a box that was in the closet, and I'm like, oh, there's another box. It's just commons. Why bother? And I went through it, and it's like, oh, God, this thing's in it. I forgot I had this thing. So yeah, that's.
So in terms of the autographs, it's so weird. Like, I remember the first couple of worlds that I went to. Like, the first one I went to in 2010, you could get the autographs from Ishihara and I think Masuda and maybe some others. And it was literally just, they were there for a few hours. And if you wanted to, you just queued up at the table. And I think I lined up for like 20 minutes and got an Ishihara autograph. And nowadays at Worlds, because just no one was really that interested in the autographs. And nowadays at Worlds, it's you have to go and queue up for an hour, like just to play the dice rolling game to have a 1 in 6 shot of getting the wristband to go to your autograph the next day or something. It's crazy how much it's changed, and all that stuff. I see that so often from you and from other professors, where it just takes it's a thing where something big sells, and then suddenly a load of professors from back in the day are just like, oh, this thing I have 3 of in my house. Like, I didn't know anything about that. What's going on? I think basically every time in Verbank something big, like a big English card sells, Mike, you're normally just posting a picture of your copy of it and saying, I didn't realize it was worth this much.
Yeah, sorry for disappearing there for a second. Yeah, so like this, the red and green deck box. What is this thing worth about?
It's into the thousands now. I think I couldn't even put a price on it. I don't have.
Yeah, so I was at one of the worlds, and I brought it with me to show off or whatever, and I happened to show it to one of the creatures guys, and he's like, oh yeah, I have a garage full of those. So there's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah. So you didn't. I don't want to pin you. Maybe it's just a personal interest of mine. So I'm going to ask one more follow-up question. When you talk about organizing, by the way, Dan Norton, he's on the podcast with us, pink hair guy. He runs a special service where he will come to your house. You just have to pay for his flight. The only 2 things: you pay for his flight, and you let him take pictures of your collection. And if you let those 2 things happen, he'll organize everything for you. So, Mike, keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, he doesn't charge anything other than that for it. So.
Oh, he's not charging you for this stuff?
No, he doesn't charge me. No, he doesn't charge me. So he's a good guy. So, but my question is, it's one thing to say I'm organized and I'll just get it all organized. And if God forbid something happens to me, then at least the family will be able to monetize it. But like, I wouldn't want to, it's not that I want to, I don't want to. And I don't think my family would do a very good job of monetizing once I'm gone. They might be, sitting ducks for anybody who's coming their way for whatever. So, do you ever, maybe just because you're just starting and I've been into it maybe just a little bit further as far as my mentality, do you ever think of when those timelines change and when you say, no, I'm going to be 70 now, I'm going to be 75, I really should have done something for this? Or do you think of more just hanging on to it in hopes your family doesn't have to sell it and it could just be legacy kind of thing?
I am selling some of the stuff that I have multiple copies of right now, and I'm also uh, getting it nice good binders, quality binders, not the old ring binders I had stuff in, and getting so anything that I have multiples of, or like if I ran the city championship that had Eevee as the promo, that's the kind of thing I got like this many of them.
Yeah.
So I can put those on. I can put those out to sell, because I know that if you try to sell the whole collection with all that stuff, you're not going to get anywhere near full value because there's just so much stuff. So
Right.
yeah, I am at this point slowly selling some stuff, and I'll probably accelerate that a little bit as time goes on.
Got it. And what about American or English versus Japanese? Um, I realize you're getting so many different kinds of things from different events and that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure. And you've also said during this podcast that you buy, you collect some things yourself. You go out and you look for bargains. So are you primarily English? Are you a little bit of both? Are you percentage wise? What do you focus on from your own collecting standpoint?
Well, I don't buy too much, not at least not currently. I mean, there was a time when I was a little more active looking for stuff, like when I got the Sneasels, they were on eBay, and nobody was buying them, and I was just, well, that's something that's good to have, so I bought them. Then there was right around the time when Wizards was moving to when the Pokemon game was moving from Wizards to the Pokemon Company. Um, Nintendo did what they call these sample cards. I'm sure Dan is aware of them. Do you have the sample cards in your collection, David?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the sample cards. They're English on the front, but Japanese on the back. And they started turning up, and they initially turned up where somebody said, is this card real, on the Pokegym at the time? And Wizards got interested because, like, hey, this is an English printed card that we didn't print, and that violates our contract. So they wanted to investigate it, and they had me, I was the authenticator for the card. They had me take a look at the card, and I said, yeah, this is a Japanese cardstock card. It's real printing, and I don't know what happened on behind the scenes, but there was a big brouhaha. But shortly after that, these started showing up on eBay at $10 a piece. And so I didn't have a lot of spare money to be buying stuff at that time, but I'm like, these are worth more than $10 a piece. So I bought as many of them as I could. And actually I've sold a lot, but these are what's left of what I sold. And so I just got these, and I don't know, what are these worth now, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a piece, depending if you have them graded or not, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, some of the bigger ones, like the Pikachu in a 10 grade, is I think 4,000-5,000, something like that.
yeah, unfortunately I only hung on to one Pikachu because I was selling them for probably about $150, which is insane if you think about it, but that's what the cards were getting at the time.
Yeah.
But I decided to hold on to the rest of them, and now they're worth what they are. And these are probably the only. I don't have any of my cards graded. If I get anything graded, I'll probably get these graded. My only thing holding me back is I don't want to be paying. They're charging a percentage of what the thing is worth now, right?
Yeah, if you do it through PSA, if it's not so much a percentage of what they're worth, but it's you grade in tiers, and it's like if you submit it in say the 500 to 1,000 tier, but if it comes back at 10, that would push it into the 1,000 to 5,000 tier. They then charge you the upcharge between the costs of the different tiers. They've started doing that. I did have
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Yeah, well, I may go with who you got the pre-release promo graded by, because I basically would only grade them for authenticity purposes.
Yeah.
And for people who are wondering when Mike's talking about printed in violation of the contract, there is those two cards which look very similar to those. It's the Hoppip and the Pichu, of which there are the sample cards, but you can get ones which have the Japanese back, but don't have the word sample on. They come in those packs with the Kirby and the Manhole card. Yeah, those I believe were that was a special contract negotiation that Nintendo, I believe, did with Wizards of the Coast to allow them to
No,
print those.
this violated the contract.
The ones without the sample?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about the ones with the sample.
Oh no, because the two without the sample were it was a big public release event. I believe they did something
The
special with
E3.
that.
You're
Yes,
talking about the E3 pack.
yeah, the E3 pack. They allowed them to do that, but then Nintendo, or what would become Pokemon USA, then went and did the 10 card sample set, which they did. It was a much more smaller backdoor industry only thing, where the intention was that these weren't going out to the public. They were being swiped by journalists and then thrown away. So I think
Yeah,
the hope
yeah.
was that Wizards of the Coast would never find out about those.
Well, they shouldn't have given them away because apparently at the end of it they gave them away to everybody. So that was probably not a good way to keep it secret.
But from
But
what I
my
hear,
estimate that there's probably about 100 of each of these, I would think, right?
I think that's the number we've heard, is that it was between 90 and 100 total sets were printed.
Well, you figure
but
one sheet, right? So there'd be 111 on a
100
sheet.
Yeah,
110, right?
110 on a sheet. But I think that the majority of the ones that were actually given out to these journalists, or were actually used at this event, a lot of those I think were thrown away. I think the majority of the ones that are in people's collections, I know certainly the set that's in my collection, are the ones that never made it to the event and are the extra ones that they had lying around. And as people left the company, they got to take some cards with them as a, like, oh, you're leaving, here's some stuff, it's cool stuff if you want it. Or they were gifted it years before and now they're allowed to sell it because they no longer work for the company. I think
Why do you
that's
say
where,
that, Dan?
well,
Why do you say that your set is probably in that category? Like,
my
do you
set
know something, or are you
my
just
set
guessing?
no, my set definitely is, because when I bought mine off eBay, it was during a time where people weren't talking about it as much. I didn't know what they were. I think this was still after you probably got all of yours, Mike, but I messaged the seller to ask where they came from, and he didn't want to give his name or any details, but he said, I worked for Pokemon. When I left, these were some things I was allowed to take and I have extras of.
Okay, yeah. These ones that I got were close to the time of when they were created. So mine, I think, would have been from the event.
So like 2002 ish.
Somewhere like that. I don't remember exactly. Let me see the copyright date on these. Oh, they don't have a copyright date.
Well, 03 was when the contract switched to Nintendo anyway, so I think Wizards
I
lost the
think
contract in 03, so it would have been a little
I'm
before
trying to
that.
remember if I got these before or after the contract changed.
Okay.
Might have been right after.
Okay. Well, yeah, mine
And I
was,
get
I think,
I get all of my cards. Dan, I get all my cards by just picking up the red phone and calling the head folks at Pokemon directly,
you
due to
get
my
all your cards
wonderful
because
level of
I go
influence.
searching for them. You get your stuff
Dan,
because I go and get it for you. Is where you
why
get
do you
your stuff.
ruin it? You didn't get the sample cards from me. I got those years
No,
ago, back
that
when
was
I
about
didn't know
years ago.
anybody. So I didn't even know you. So
That's the red phone on top of Dan's head there.
yes, exactly. You just pick that up and then you get the commissioner Pokemon, and he gives me all my.
And I
instead
think
of
that's why
everything
you got that banner behind you there, right? Because their hair looks like yours.
Oh, because
Dan, he's talking to you. Do you see that?
Yeah, Simisia's,
They really do.
Pansia's hair looks a bit like mine. I
They
guess
really
it's
do.
color, and then it's Pansage and Panpour's hair actually have the same style as mine. I didn't notice that until you said it, but that makes sense.
Now you can never unsee it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So Mike, you obviously are lucky to be in your position. You certainly have worked a long time to get where you are and get the access to these wonderful cards. You're saying you're not buying much anymore these days. It was easier to buy back in the day when there was a little bit more bargains. So do you consider your collection as really, not to overuse the word, but this compendium of all of the things that you've just happened to, for the most part, acquire through your work with Pokemon, as opposed to you really focusing on anything when you went out there to try and buy?
Well, I mean, I try to get a complete. I'm not going to call it a master set because you guys have a wild ass definition of master set. But I try to get a complete collection of the different sets, and I have I've kind of given up on getting a complete collection because there's just so much damn stuff nowadays.
Preaching to the
So
choir on that one, Mike.
yeah, so
Really
I
is.
just if I find things like when I was at Worlds, I brought some cards to trade to see if I could get some interesting ones. I'm unfortunately I'm cheap, so there's a lot of stuff that I could have gotten that I didn't get because I didn't want to spend that much money. But now years later, it's like, man, that would have been a good deal now. But at the time, it was too much for me.
Well, that's the luck of the philosophy of the World's cards that I happen to very luckily, fortunately own because I wasn't cheap back then. Having said that, I will say that when you talk about the value of stuff today, and Dan will talk about that Pikachu on the sample set and if it's graded, and I'm like you, I don't grade, so I have no idea what it's valued for because I never did it for valuation, right? I just got it to put inside the collection to fill a hole, like I say. And then so it's very different when you are looking at something from the standpoint of money, making money, how much you want to spend. When you talk about not buying sets these days, I will tell you now, it's frustrating. Every time I buy a set, I just bought the Paldean Fates Master set to continue the latest set, not Master set, but Paldean Fates complete set, and we'll fill in those additional variants. And I knew that the money I spent essentially, and I know this is going to sound silly to folks that are watching, but I kind of was throwing it away because I'm not, in a standpoint, it's wonderful for my collection, but it's never going to give me back the money I spent someday down the road. Just hobby's not like that anymore. So if I spend $1,000, maybe it's worth 400 down the road.
10, 15 years from now,
It's not. Even the sets that were 10, 15 years old aren't barely bringing that interest even now. And they were so much more rare, Mike. So when you go back to even the early sets, there just isn't interest in set collecting. So the demand piece is so sparse. And everybody that's coming in now is looking more and more for the new modern stuff, which means you have to have all of these guys really get into their 40s and 50s and come into disposable income and want to go backwards. So I just understand that if I buy Paldean Fates today and spend $1,000 or whatever on that set, I am not buying it for investment. I'm truly buying it as a collector, and I'm doing it because of my responsibility to continue to move this thing forward. Right. But if it was for investment, gosh, I'd sure be better off to buy a bunch of sealed Paldean Fates and put it away.
Right.
That would
totally
turn back.
That. Well, here, let me show you something here. So these are probably things you don't have in your collections. These are complete sets.
From when they used to give them to Worlds winners.
The Worlds people, yeah.
Well, there's so there's a lot of those. That one's Team Up. This one's Sun and Moon 3.5. So this is what's 3.5.
Just the way those come
Shining Fates, maybe?
They come packed in with a lot of styrofoam.
Yes. When you said, Mike, you just said there's a lot of that. So just curious, are yours different than that? Are yours like if somebody got a Champion's Path or something specific? I know most of the time they'll get like an actual set, not one of the intermediate ones. But are yours different in their labeling?
I have no idea. So these,
okay.
I mean, the labeling changes from set to set, but basically what's in here as marked as a full card set is everything you could get as in a booster pack. Right. So it doesn't come with the promo cards or the alt versions or things like that. It's just if you can get it in a booster pack, that's what's in those.
What's so interesting, and I think I mentioned this to you in this past week, Mike, and we were just going back and forth with some stuff, is my first, understanding or exposure to those sets were when I think I was at Worlds and folks told me that these were complete sets, but they were not of the same condition. Now, of course, what am I saying? Well, you can open booster packs and get stuff in poor condition, but they were supposed to be like sort of test sets, and they weren't necessarily going to be perfect condition, that kind of thing.
No, that's not what I've seen.
Right. And as I've come across them myself and opened them and had a chance to access several of them, they've really been very, very nice condition. So
Now,
um,
I guess they could be, because probably some of them are given out to employees so they can play around with them or whatnot.
right,
So,
right.
some of those from employees, after they've opened them and played around with them and then put them back in and put them on the market, possibly some of those could be in not so great condition, but they don't come that way.
Yeah, understood, understood. Very, very neat things though. All these different little things you have in all these nooks and crannies are really cool. So um, it's very cool, and it's deserving of being involved so many years in the hobby. I need to tell you something just from an autograph standpoint. Everybody knows more about me than autographs, but about autographs. But I found a handful of autographs in my collection that I sold a year or two ago. I don't collect autographs, and one of them was Chris Rush. I didn't know who he was, nor did I know that he'd passed away.
Hmm.
And so people jumped all over the listing, and it was gone in 4 seconds. And
Was
then
that
I had
the card that he had drawn?
a card that he had just signed, maybe a
Okay,
card.
so
I know it was his autograph on a card.
it wasn't the promo Mewtwo that he drew.
I don't know if it was. I just don't remember. I just remember his specific autograph on a card that maybe he just was the artist or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point was, I had people coming to me for 3 days after saying, I will please cancel the order. I will give you 4, 5, 6, 7, any price you want. So I encourage you, before you go and sell those, certainly make sure you collaborate, discuss with an autograph expert to get your full value.
Yeah, I have an idea of what those are worth. I mean, certainly like the Ken Sugimori Shadowless Blastoise, the Arita Shadowless Charizard. I'm sure those are like $10,000 range, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I have a concept of what they're gonna range.
I imagine you had a couple of messages about those executors after you posted them.
Yeah, I posted some pictures when I was last year when I was finding these from all the different places and putting them together. I posted some pictures of them things, and I had a number of people sell me this, sell me that. And I'm like, well, no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll have a few comments on this video, wanting to be told if some of this stuff ever does go up for auction. Like, I think there will be a lot of people hoping that deck box sells someday. Your World 06 one.
Yeah. I'm glad I found that again, because that's a nice one. There's another. Now you don't collect deck boxes, but there's a deck box to collect.
Yeah, the one that they allegedly destroyed every copy of.
Right. These were, I guess, the sample box. They had a sample case that they sent before they sent the real one. So these are all that was left. All the other ones got destroyed.
Very cool.
I think I've seen one of those in person before at one of Yeti's booths at a regionals, but it's a very cool looking deck box. It sucks as well that that's the rare one, because that I think is genuinely the best art out of that whole like range that they did for the pre-releases. So that's the one where it's like, oh, I just kind of like to use that as a deck box. It looks awesome compared to some of the others.
They did a Professor Cup once where they said, well, you can't bling out your deck. We want you to use the lowest rarity for the cards you're putting in your deck. So I says, oh, I can't bling out my deck. Okay, here's my deck box.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I'll
Mike,
tell you what it is later, David. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, I know. I get it. It's so funny because I had some of that stuff years ago. Not necessarily that box, but like the 2006 and other things. And so much of this stuff it goes through phases. And when you go to sell, certain things may be hotter than others. I could not, even on the eBay, I might sell a playmat never, and then all of a sudden I sell 3. So you just don't know, the different kind of, fits and starts that come in with different podcasts that might be out there, different ways that other people are pushing people towards certain items. And I think it's what's intriguing, though. It makes the hobby more fun because there's so many different, levels of enjoyment that people can have depending on what their interest is. So, Mike, do you know about Pocket? Do you know Dan talked about Pocket last week?
I saw the announcement video for it.
Okay. Your thoughts at all?
It depends on how interactive it is with the other games. If it's going to be a standalone thing, it'll probably be a nice, cute little thing. I don't know if it'll, uh, I don't know if it'll reach the level Go did. Certainly Go blew up nicely, but if the games are pretty simplistic, then it may just be more of a collecting thing. So I don't know. Hope it does well, but I don't think it'll interfere with the trading card game. Getting physical cards is different than getting a virtual card. You never really
And
own a virtual card.
yeah, yeah, unless you got to be big into NFTs or something. So Pokemon Go, there was clearly cards made for that, physical cards. Do we think that there might be, since they made a Pokemon Go? Do we think they might do a Pokemon Pocket cards at some point?
Well, it looks like there's some unique cards in Pokemon Pocket that aren't in the real game as of now. Whether they're going to come out with them or not later, but certainly if they have any significant number of cards that are unique to that game that aren't printed in the real thing, they could certainly do some kind of pocket release like they did with the Pokemon Go set.
Yeah, I mean it's really fun to cross over. I think it's really cool. It just potentially opens new folks from different sides to the opposite side or other sides they haven't looked at before. So
Yeah, one of the cool Japanese cards they have is ones that were made with art from the Pokemon Snap game. Unfortunately, we never got those in English.
Yeah.
yes, correct.
Most people in Japan didn't get those either. They were very, very limited. I think with Pocket, because the cards that are unique to Pocket, it looks like they're doing stuff where they make it unique to Pocket because it's not things they could do with real cards. It's like the augmented reality artwork and stuff. So because of that, I can see them doing a few different Pocket collaboration promos. I don't feel like they'll do a full set the way that they did with Go. I don't know if there's enough of a crossover interest there with the fact that the card art is better in the app, really. But I can definitely see a couple of random promos with like the Pocket logo on it or something.
Well, Go was out for years before they wound up doing the half set for that.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
So,
So Mike, what is your favorite card that you own? What is something that
Ditto.
takes you back, or what?
Ditto. Fossil Ditto is my favorite Pokemon and my favorite card.
Okay, how come?
Because he can be anything. Be all you can be. And it is actually in the original compendium, it takes up more pages of rulings than any other card.
That's great. And why does it take up more pages?
Well, so the card only has one, what they called back then Pokemon Power, transform. It doesn't have an attack. It just has transform, and it says whatever your opponent's active is, that's what this card is. And it can turn any color energy card, any color energy into any color you want it to be. So with the combination of those two things, it can be a pretty powerful card, but it also can have a lot of downsides. Once Baby Pokemon came out, that card was dead because you could get 30 damage on it, switch up a Baby Pokemon against it, which only has 30 hit points, and suddenly, if it had been 120 hit point Charizard, now suddenly it's a 30 hit point Cleffa, and it's knocked out. So it kind of died in the format at that moment, but up until then, it was a really cool card, and how those interactions worked. There were so many different interactions because people were having a lot of trouble getting their head wrapped around this card being a copy of that card, and what's my point of view, and how can I do this attack? How does this interact? All kinds of weird things.
That's great. I love the story. That's what makes a lot of this whole collecting thing really so neat, is that people do have these stories that they can kind of think back on, even if it's not relevant anymore, it was back at the time. So we talked about simpler times. Do you feel more pressure as a judge these days? In other words, we're in a world where scrutiny can come so much more quickly. So if someone doesn't get it right, or if there's even the optics of it not being right, there can be so much more, consequences to bear. So
Right.
do you ever feel any of that, or no?
Well, any judge who tells you that they've never made a mistake is either a liar or they haven't done much. Everyone's made mistakes. I've made mistakes, and you remember those mistakes for the rest of your career. Um, so yeah, you want to get it right as much as possible. One of the things we do, since I'm a member of the rules team, is we actually have a weekly meeting where we get together and talk about card interactions and prep cards for the rulings. So I have luckily had constant immersion in the cards every week, regardless of whether I'm working a tournament or not. But also, since I'm organizing tournaments, I'm out there seeing what's out there. Working the big events, you get to see it. Participate in the forums, see the discussions that are going on there. So, I stay pretty active, and if a judge stays pretty active and engages in what's available, they should be able to get up to speed. And as Dan said, unfortunately, there's a big leap now from the local events to regionals, where you're going from 20, 30, 40, 50 players to 3,000 players. It's a major hurdle for a lot of people. So one of the things they do is they bring on people who don't have a lot of experience and pair them up. So if you have a judge team, you may have one or two new people, two or three people who have some experience, but you use some more, and then two or three people who are very experienced, and you have that mix to help transfer the knowledge among the group. So, I think they're doing the best they can with that big jump. I think it would be nice if they had an intermediate size tournament in there for people to get a little more experience, but we don't have that now. So, but there are the seminars and videos for people to watch to help get them up to speed.
I don't know if you follow sports or not, but there's in like the NBA, there's what they call like the 2-minute report that the referees do. So after games, they'll go back and they'll analyze all together the last couple minutes of every game, and then they'll announce what mistakes were made and what was correct and what was incorrect. Invariably, there's a few mistakes, and they can be head turning and they can be game altering as well. A very visible scrutiny. So it's probably good that yours is a little bit more behind the scenes, but it's nice to hear that all that work is being put in. I'm sure the players, there's some players that are going to say thank you so much for all you do, and others are going to say you never do enough. But it's nice to hear that a lot's being done to try to make sure that as the game grows, there's some real, talent and skill and training behind all the judging that's going on as well. So. I need to stop for a minute because I have to do some administrative business that Dan makes me do. Mike, I wouldn't do it. He makes me do it. There's nothing I can do. So to those of you that are still watching, and we appreciate you, we know you're not watching for Dan and I, you're watching for Mike. Thank goodness for Mike. I do want to announce, I didn't tell Dan that I was going to announce, I'm down here. This is a different computer. I'm going to move my face down to here now. Here I am. I'm going to announce the winner for last week's drawing. Dan, we've been out long enough, even though you make me podcast every 12 to 24 hours. But have we been out long enough for me to give a gift to somebody?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thanks,
whatever
Dan.
you want to do.
This week's winner, because what did they send in my? Did they send me in my DMs? Oh, the variant number, which was 86. Thank you for your sending. Thank you for reposting those that did it. Please understand, I am not sure that there's a few of you that are getting by not putting a comment on the video. This is your last warning, and I'm not kidding. I know where you all live because I send packages to you. I will come and find you. Put a video comment on and then submit to my DMs the answer. All right. So the last week's winner was, and I don't know this person, so thank you for being a new person, Pokey Gains, Pokey-GAINZ-90. We'll have to find out what your real name is and where I'm going to be shipping something to that I possibly will or won't ship you when I possibly make a decision to or to not do that. Thank you very much for winning. This week's giveaway, if you're still watching and would like to participate, you need to go to my direct messages. It's on Instagram at dperson1. And you have to send me a message. It has to say Pop. That's Mike Martin. We call him Pop. Pop the OG. Okay, that's what it's got to say. Pop the OG. And if you send that to me so we know that Pop is really the OG, then you're going to be entered as long as you put a comment on the video and tell us how Pop really is the OG or whatever you want to put in there, because he really is. So that's it. Dan, did I not say anything in particular to those couple of things? Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, Dan, let me stop there before I go on. Anything else I got to say about that?
No, I think that's probably fine.
Okay, good. Dan likes to cut me off, guys. There's more to be said, but he says, David, you're going to round off at the if I don't stop. So, the podcast deal of the day, okay? Guys, I don't have any more Tropical Mega Battle executors I can put in for deal of the day. Mike Martin owns every other one that's on the market, and they're autographed too. I don't have anything like deck boxes that are signed. So, we do the best we can here on Coffee Talks, all right? All my deal of the day stuff can buy you is like a nickel, quarter, a buck, and you get a cup of coffee. That's it. So, the podcast deal of the day is the Black Star promos 025. 025. It's Flygon and Flygon with the winner stamp. I don't know what year it's from. Dan will put pictures up. Get the small print, crease it, look at it, and you'll love the cards. They're nice. I looked at the two cards on eBay for similar conditions. These are brand new. There might be the littlest tiny speck of white every once in a while. I mean, it is a speck, but they're brand new, untouched, unplayed. And I think for those two cards, it's $90 roughly out the door for both of them on eBay. So it's going to be $45 for the pair. And that includes shipping. Of course, you must pay PayPal, friends and family, or Zelle. That's all I take. If you can't, I'm sorry, but I know you can because you do, and people do buy this stuff. And so $45 for the pair. Down and put it up on the screen. Thanks for participating in the deal of the day. Last week, you guys what?
When you say the pair, is that the regular one and the winner stamped one together?
You get both cards. You get the regular one without the winner stamp, and you get the winner stamp card. You get both the pair. I call them 025. Yes.
Cool.
Black Star promos.
Do you have a lot of these, or is this a very limited deal where there's only a couple?
Dan, it looks like I have about 9 or 10 at count. That's it. Nine or 10 pairs. Last week we did the Mew 09s, and they went very quickly. They're gone. So again, anything you guys get to us early if you're interested, because they don't last long with the quantities that I have.
Cool.
Okay, thank you for listening. Okay, Mike, back to you. Much more interesting than all of that baloney. Mike, how do you look at the future? So you're 62. You're young and spry, and nobody cares about monetizing anything in your collection because your family just loves you for loving whatever you love. So how long are you going to do this Pokemon thing for the next 30 years? Or you love it and you're just going to keep doing it?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm not thinking about it. I'm just doing it. If they ever get tired of me, then maybe they'll get tired of me and say, we don't want you around anymore.
Does your wife travel with you to these events, to the Worlds and all these different places?
She used to, but she was like, well, I'm just sitting in the hotel room while you're at this event all day long. Because when you're working, back in the early days, 2004, 2005, you'd go to Worlds. That was a vacation. They'd have the tournament. There really weren't side events to speak of. It was just the main event. And the main event was, a 300-person tournament maybe. And so, you'd run that over a couple of days and you'd have plenty of off time and hang out with friends and whatnot. The way they do these events now is not only is the size of the tournament a lot larger, but there's all the side events going on all the time. So you're working the event from when, first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning to 9, 10 o'clock at night. And, all you have time, at least me with spry 62-year-olds, all I'm up for is to get some dinner and go to bed. It's not fun for her to go there and maybe she can go around and do some things on her own, but that's not the same thing. When we went to Japan, I went to Japan on my own, but two of the other members of Team Compendium stayed a few days later, and the three of us went around Japan for a little bit. I figured I'm not going to go to Japan and not see any of it. So we stayed for a little bit and went around, saw different things, different Pokemon centers, Skytree, some of the Buddhist temples and whatnot. So that was nice. But, this year's Hawaii, maybe I'll take a week before or a week after. Maybe she'll come out to Hawaii with me, but if she was just coming out during the tournament, I'd be busy doing the tournament.
Right. Do you still work for a living as well, Mike?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah. I sell, I sell printing equipment.
Oh, okay. I wondered if it would be something that was, you talked a lot about your enjoyment of analytics. So I thought you might go more towards engineering, but.
Well, I have a doctorate of chemistry.
Okay.
But I wound up getting into sales instead.
And what about that side? Because I still work for a living as well. Because Dan keeps spending my money. What are you thinking as far as any notion of retirement on that side of your life?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's not that many years away, right? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
I might like to retire in a few years and do some traveling. I see some of my friends and the other friends that are judges that are, of similar age, and they've retired, and I see them talking about all the different places they're going. I'm like, man, it'd be really nice to do that.
yeah. Well, I think you're very fortunate again, just because I've done this for so long in financial planning for folks, but because you have this whole Pokemon thing to fall back on, that it's almost like retirement for you wouldn't be retirement. Still going to have all this other work in Pokemon, and you still have all these other things that you potentially can monetize for whatever it is you decide to use it for. And then the other thing about being both our ages, and by the way, when you spoke about 62 and all you're done with the tournament, all you want to do is eat and go to bed. It's not an age thing. That's actually Dan's entire that's what he lives for, basically eating and going to bed. I've seen it up close, but the thing is, we all think we're going to live forever, and you just don't know, right? And as I watch more and more friends my age and clients pass, it weighs on me about making sure that I'm trying to get the time to do things while I still can. Because in my mind, I can do it till I'm 90 or 95, but we all know at some point the body fails and there's nothing you can do. So,
Yeah,
so I'm,
I'm not planning on working until I die.
yeah, yeah, good for you. That's good for you. What would you give as far as advice, Mike, to anybody that? And Dan, I know you don't want to hear this because Laura's going in to be a judge now, and she's a new whole career she's got going. But Mike, there's going to be people that are watching that think, hey, this whole thing is growing. Maybe there is some place for me to jump in every once in a while in a new role in Pokemon, a new person. I could go to some of these venues. I could get some swag. I could be a judge, a professor. I could just run around and do whatever errand boy things they need to ask. I'm really asking for me, Mike, and making it sound like it's for younger people. What would you say as far as advice and information to people on how they might go about doing that? Is there any opportunity out there? Is there a way to get in the door to these things?
Yeah, well, there always is. Really, the best way now is to get involved with your local gaming store that is either running events or, if you're up for it, a store that's not really running events, and say, hey, I can help you start running events. Um, I'm an introvert. It's really hard for me to go out and talk to people, but I've always found that I kind of take on a persona when I'm going out selling, and going to talk to new stores about starting up Pokemon. I kind of put on my persona and talk to them, rather than, because if it was just me, I'd be unable to say a word. um, so if you're, get involved, look to help at your local tournaments, and once you get some experience either doing that or helping a new store get started, then once you've done, get involved in the Professor Discord, take the courses on the Professor University, so you can learn what there is to learn there, and send out those applications. Like I said, they for regionals, like I said, they do bring on new judges, but they want to see somebody who's done something, right? So they can't really have someone walk into a regional who's never judged a tournament at all, even though, like myself, my first tournament was Super Trainer Showdown, but
Right.
that's not usually the case. So get some experience at a local level, send in an application to a regionals, work, either as a floor judge, getting help from other people, or side events. A lot of times new people come in and they work side events. It's a really good way to get experience of working at a large event without the pressure of, like you said earlier, about the pressure of getting it right. There's a lot less pressure on side events. You're working a lot because you're running a lot of different side events, but there's no pressure of, oh my God, if I make the wrong ruling, this guy's day is going to be ruined.
Yeah.
Side events, if you make a mistake, you throw a couple of packs at it and everybody's happy. So that's a really good way to get started at the bigger events, and let people see that you have a work ethic and are willing to take direction, follow the chain of command.
Okay. Good advice. I appreciate it. Now I want to tangent just very quickly. You talked about your career as a a printer salesman, you said?
Yeah, copiers.
Yeah. So you've been doing that for a while, I would imagine.
About 18 years.
Okay, so my tangent here is for those that are, I like to sort of occasionally try to throw a pearl of wisdom to some of the typical demographic that's watching us that's a 30-year-old guy. Okay, it doesn't mean it's all of you. Obviously, there's many other folks that are watching, but there's a misconception out there, and it's a very strong one, that you must be an extrovert to be successful at selling. So for those that think that, I want to point out, here is a gentleman on the podcast with us, Mike Martin, who admittedly says, I am an introvert. And by the way, I am the same exact thing. And I've had to spend my entire life selling financial planning and services to families in the financial services industry. And the selling process and the way we go about communicating is different than an extrovert is, but it's still very effective. And you can still have a wonderful career. It's a little bit different. It's more personal. It's more intimate. It's more listening to people. It's more caring about what people have to say and really understanding their needs than throwing stuff out from our mouths and seeing what's going to stick against that wall. So when Mike talks about that, that's a very valuable pearl of wisdom to pull out of this, that whether or not it's this or whether or not it's him taking on another persona to go and involve other new leagues in it, it's nothing more than saying, hey, I'm here to help. What can I do? And a lot of people are going to say there's nothing, they don't have any interest, they shoo you away, but that doesn't stop you. You continue to care. It's about caring when you're an introvert more than anything. And when people really see that intimacy in you, it will be hopefully lead to very good success in business as well as Pokemon as well. Mike,
Yeah,
anything?
I would say that the best compliment that I've gotten, and I've gotten it a couple of times, was you're not a salesman, or you're not a good salesman. And this both times was after the person had just signed a contract that was worth more than my entire monthly commission, my entire monthly quota. And what they meant by it was I didn't pressure them into doing anything. I merely guided them and showed them opportunities and choices that they weren't aware of, and let them make the decision, or at least help them make the decision. And so they didn't feel like they were being sold to. They felt that I was an advisor rather than a salesperson.
Yeah, which is just wonderful, wonderful advice from someone who's been successful his entire life and all the stuff that you've done. So it's, I'm going to now throw back to the podcast. When Dan and I do this podcast, we really try to be objective and not subjective. We try to just put out information. We try to let you guys know that you can come to us for questions. We don't have incentive to try to push you in any one direction. We try to listen. We try to help. And we also try to listen to you guys and take whatever information you can provide to us. It's no different than Mike providing some more information on the bilingual executors that he had today, and then push it back out to you. So as a community, we're able to continue to enhance the information flow and the accuracy of what information is out there for the entire community as a whole. So I appreciate all of that, Mike. It's just great, great information, advice, and kindness for you to share with everyone.
My pleasure.
Dan, I've talked as much as I can talk because, God, just listening to myself, I think I threw up in my mouth 2 more times. What do you want to say, Dan? Anything coming out that you want to talk to Mike about or anything?
Well, I just want to ask Mike, is there anything else cool that you want to show off? Is there anything else in your collection or do you have around that you want to say, people should look at this?
Okay, here. We were talking about the large cards before, so these are the large Kingdra line, and they're from
okay. I am so glad. Wait a minute. Hold that up for a minute, sir. Hold that up for a sec. You just reminded me what I was going to say. Okay, if you're watching, this is it. I need you to comment now, and I need you to tell Mike that as long as I sign an agreement, never to sell the card, just to put it on my wall. Can he give me a good deal and sell me one of these cards so I can put it on my wall someday? Okay, that's what I need you to throw a comment and say, Mike, do it for the good of David and his hobby collection, whatever. Okay, good. Continue, Mike.
He either needs to sell you all 3 or none of them. You can't just buy
No,
one.
I don't care. I don't want, because they're not, I don't need to make a part of the collection. I don't need to be greedy. I just want to put one up on the wall because they're really, really cool.
But it's
That's
an evolution.
That's what the back looks like.
Yeah, really cool. Really neat.
How
Very
thick
special. What?
How thick are they? Is it like poster board?
These are relatively thin. These are
Okay.
like a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch.
Okay.
Um,
Like maybe
this thing,
cardstock that's just put on.
this thing is very thick. This thing is like this is like a half inch thick, and it weighs a good bit. The sneasels, the giant sneasels, are pretty heavy. Those are heavy things too. They're thick like that.
I just can't imagine when you said that somebody sells you those for like $99 and they throw in the other stuff. Maybe they must have picked it up from you or something, or I mean, you must have picked it up from them because I don't know how they could have shipped it.
They were the company that broke down the Super Trainer Showdown. I don't know if they were the company that set it up or not, but they were the ones that broke it down.
Okay.
So they just basically kept everything that they had broken down after the tournament.
Yeah, it's just really cool. I mean, best Dan and I could do were some old banners, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, come on. We want the real cardboard. I want, what is it? What was that guy with a hat, Dan? Which was a Pikachu that was like an explorer in the jungle and he had a brown hat on or something? What year was that Worlds?
Oh, yeah.
2019 DC. That one I think was.
Okay.
Mike's gonna go get one.
Yeah, Mike's got everything in there, man. We need to don't post his address. There's trolls. But I want to get one.
There you go.
Yeah, what is that, Dan?
And there's the Eevee.
Yeah,
is that 20?
That's the Worlds that this is. No, wait. I'm sorry. No, that's from the earlier one. I take it back. That was from Washington as well, but that was the earlier Washington. This is from. This was right before the pandemic. This is 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
The previous Washington was 2014, I think.
I would walk around that place and I would look at some of those little caricatures and the wooden cutouts and all that stuff, and you know, and you know, if I wasn't an introvert, which I am, unfortunately, and that doesn't work then, I would have gone up to anybody and said, look, what's it going to cost? You know, because I just want one to just set up in the living room. So when the kids come in, I can say, I'm talking to Eevee, get out. You know, that's what
I got some nice pictures on the stage at the second Washington one where they had the fossil Pokemon, but they had them like skeletalized.
So cool. Yes.
And so we got to go up on stage and take pictures with them. I got one with my head in their mouth, like it's biting my head off. But unfortunately, they weren't giving those away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you would do very well, my friend, if you either wrote a blog or you were posting daily or something. Just some of these little bit of these little incidents and experiences, people would love that. You know, I'm gonna. This is the last thing I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna let you and Dan talk till I wave goodbye. But what I did this year for my client event is I gave out books for people to write their family legacy to my clients before they pass. And if you start writing a little bit, Mike, just a little bit, some of these stories, your family, everybody will appreciate it before they all disappear. So think about jotting some of this down, because when it does fade away, it really does fade away.
That's something to consider. I mean, I do a podcast, which I kind of had gotten away from with the pandemic, but I just did a recent update on a card interaction that people are having a lot of trouble with. But I actually was thinking, I could do some of these just showing off parts of the collection, but part of it is getting the collection in a shape where I can show it off. You know,
yeah,
not random bits that are spread all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've been trying to do with David's, is get it all fully sorted and fully catalogued.
And I'm not supposed to talk anymore because I said I wasn't going to talk. So I just need you to take it from here, Dan, and run. But I am going to say this. What they say about podcasting, Mike, is if you wait for perfection and if you wait for it to all be organized, you never do it. So you can start tomorrow, one thing at a time, one story at a time, one anecdote at a time, and all of a sudden you'll have 100 podcasts or posts out there, and people will absolutely love it. I just think you're a treasure of this hobby, and you know, it definitely takes work, and I'm not sure that's fair to you, but if you have the time, I know the community would really appreciate it. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we are pushing close to the 2-hour mark already, so we'll not go into too much discussion. Mike, is there anything you want to shout out? Do you have any events or anything coming up that people should be on the lookout for?
I'll be working at the Indianapolis Regional. I'll be working as an assistant head judge in one of the younger age groups there. So you can look for me there, and hopefully I'll get to go to internationals and worlds. You never know, because you have to wait for the invitation. So can't you can't guarantee it nowadays. There's so many people trying and a lot of talented people.
Cool. Well, if you send us over a link to whatever podcasts and stuff you're doing, we'll make sure all of that stuff is in the description as well, so anyone can go along and check that out, listen to Mike talk about some rulings and stuff, and you can maybe learn something about playing Pokemon a little bit.
All right, cool.
Yeah. But I think that's it for us for today. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Thanks to Mike for being our guest. And thanks to More Than Never for allowing us to use their music on this podcast. Their Spotify links and everything are in the description below also. So, Mike or David, any last words at all before we get going?
No, you know what I always say. I'll just say thanks to Mike. I can't thank you enough. You don't have to do this. It's, you've got many other things that take up your time. We are sincerely appreciative that you would give us your time, your wisdom, your intelligence, your experience, just all of it. We can't thank you enough. So thanks, Mike, and the greatest of success to you as the pop of this industry going forward too.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a good time.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to all of you guys who've watched, and we will see you again very soon.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to have a